Across billions of worlds, the system runs without error, except once. One lord awakened beyond classification. One mind began rewriting fate. This is not luck. This is calculation. This is evolution. You are listening to The Summoned, a story by Celestial Debugger. Arav woke to the smell of smoke and the sound of coughing. For a brief, confusing moment, he thought he was back in Vyuna. He could almost see his apartment, the glow of his data screens, and hear his mother calling him for breakfast. Then the rough straw beneath his back grounded him in reality. The white void, the shattered pillar, the starving valley, the half-elf ranger stepping from ancient stones. Memory settled heavily into place. He sat up, his muscles aching in a way they had not since his academy training days. Pale pre-dawn light slipped through cracks in the hut walls. Outside, voices were raised in argument. Arav pushed aside the hide door and stepped into the cold morning air. The valley was awake. Smoke rose from a weak central fire where villagers gathered in tense clusters. Varen stood near the flames, his voice tight with frustration. "You can't just demand food. These people are starving." Ilara's reply was calm and measured. "I am not demanding. I am stating facts. You have limited rations. At my required intake, I consume 3 times that of a normal human. Without proper nourishment, my combat ability drops significantly." "We don't have enough," Varen shot back. The crowd parted when Arav approached. "I heard," he said quietly. He studied Ilara. "You're testing us." She lifted an eyebrow. "You wanted to see if we would promise what we cannot give," Arav continued. "If we understand long-term survival." A pause stretched between them. Then Ilara gave a small, approving smile. "I have served many lords," she said. "Most treat summoned warriors as tools. They ration strength and then wonder why loyalty fades." Arav turned to Varen. "Tell me the real numbers." Varen hesitated before answering. 5 units produced daily. 17 consumed. 40 stored. Arav did the calculation instantly. They did not have 12 days. They had 3. He inhaled slowly, forcing his thoughts into order. Panic would not save them. Arav kept his voice steady. "Ilara, at half rations, how effective are you?" 40%, she answered without hesitation. "At full rations, 100%. He nodded once. "You eat full rations. 3 units per day." A murmur spread through the villagers. "Everyone else receives half," Arav continued. "Children and the elderly receive 3/4. Varen looked troubled. "Lord, it means survival," Arav said firmly. "If our strongest fighter weakens, we all die. Strength where it matters most." After a long moment, Varen bowed his head. "As you command." Ilara did not speak, but the sharpness in her gaze softened slightly. The morning became a census. Arav walked through every hut with Varen at his side. He met each of the 87 villagers by name. Farmers who knew soil better than books. Hunters who tracked by instinct. Woodcutters with worn hands. Elderly veterans who could still teach discipline. Children who carried fear too quietly for their age. He memorized faces, skills, and weaknesses. And through it all, the old dog followed him. "She chose you," Ilara said when they paused near the well. "You should name her." Arav focused and activated his analysis. Mountain wolfhound, rare breed, current rank F, health failing, hidden potential D rank if restored, loyalty absolute. The final note lingered in his mind. This creature has never failed its people. "Kiri," Arav said softly. The dog's tail tapped once against the ground. Ilara gave a small nod. "Good. Now, about the evolution you mentioned." Arav checked his mana. 355 total. 1 evolution available. Cost to evolve the wheat field. 300. He looked toward the thin, struggling crops. "Gather everyone," he said. "We do it now." Hope moved through the valley like a spark catching dry grass. For the first time since arriving in Aethel, Arav felt something other than calculation. The entire valley gathered around the wheat field. 87 villagers stood in a wide circle. Ilara watched quietly from the edge. Kiri sat near Arav's side, her old eyes alert. Arav stepped forward and placed his hand on the thin stalks. "Today," he said clearly, "everything changes." He activated his talent. Power surged through him like a rushing current. It flowed down his arm and into the soil. The wheat began to glow with soft green light. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the glow spread across the field. Mana drained rapidly. The stalks thickened before their eyes. Leaves darkened into a deep, healthy green. New shoots burst from the ground, rising faster than any natural growth. The air hummed with energy. For 12 long seconds, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then it stopped. The light faded. Silence followed. The field no longer looked fragile. It stood tall and dense, stretching wider than before. The transformation was undeniable. Daily yield increased to 15 units, triple the previous amount. A woman fell to her knees in tears. A man laughed in disbelief. Children rushed forward, but stopped at the edge of the field, staring in awe. Tessa tugged at Arav's sleeve. "You're a wizard," she whispered. He knelt beside her, exhausted but steady. "No," he said gently. "I just help things become more than they were." She glanced at Kiri. "Can you help her too?" Arav looked at the old wolfhound. Beneath fading strength, he could sense the hidden potential waiting to awaken. Soon, he promised. The villagers moved quickly after that. They harvested with urgency and hope, bundling wheat and carrying it to storage. By late afternoon, 15 full units were secured. Combined with their remaining rations, survival was no longer measured in days. For the first time, it was measured in months. By evening, the granary was full. 15 new units of wheat rested in storage. Combined with what remained of their old rations, the valley now had enough to survive the winter. For the first time, laughter rose around the central fire. Arav sat quietly, watching his people eat. Not greedily, not desperately, carefully, with relief. Elara lowered herself beside him. "You spent 300 mana today," she said calmly. "You now have 55 remaining. At 8 recovered per day, you will regain full evolution capacity in 31 days. The competition begins in 29, Arav replied. She nodded once. You could evolve smaller targets instead. Tools, weapons, perhaps the dog. Several smaller improvements instead of one large one. And leave the wall weak, he asked, and enter the competition unprepared, she countered. The fire crackled between them. Arav stared into the flames, running scenarios through his mind. If he waited, he could strengthen something critical. If he acted early, he could create multiple advantages. Both paths carried risk. Tomorrow, he said at last, I assess everything. Every structure, every resource, every weakness. Then I decide. Elara studied him carefully. You are different from the others, she said. How? You ask questions. Most lords never did. She rose and stepped back into the shadows. Arav looked down at Kiri, curled near his feet. What do you think? He asked softly. The old wolfhound thumped her tail once against the ground. A small smile touched his lips. They were outnumbered, outranked, outmatched, but they were not hopeless, not anymore. Above them, unseen and silent, the world will watched. And in the Valley of 87 Souls, something had begun to grow stronger than fear. Leadership. And so, the board shifts once more. If you enjoyed this chapter, leave a like to support the Valley's growth. Comment your thoughts below. What would you evolve next? Subscribe and return for the next chapter of the Evolution Lord, because the system is watching, and the story has only just